For joining us, ladies and gentlemen. You're listening to Text Messages, The Resurrection. I'm the parasite of the show, Rick Tex. I'm glad to be here and broadcasting for you. We actually won't exist without you, hence me a parasite, you a host. So we're just glad that you've allowed us into your homes, or onto your speakers, or onto your video screen, TV, digital screen, cathode ray tube, wherever you may be. Hell, if you're listening through smoke signal conversions or some variation like that, we're honored. And anyway you're receiving this transmission, we're honored to be a part of it, and we're honored that you've allowed us into your lives, more or less. So today we're talking about a pretty serious, not really a serious issue, but a pretty serious part of your internal structure. So we have been talking about a few bodily functions lately, all the four aspects of blood, kidneys, and today we're going to discuss the liver. We probably will discuss some more junk in the future, but you got the skin, heart, intestinal system. The intestinal system is actually quite vast. You got the esophagus, the stomach, gallbladder, pancreas, small intestines, big intestines, colon, and then other things that interact with that. And then got a few other important organs too. The spleen, the gallbladder, the regular bladder, and then you got your lungs. That's probably about it, though. I don't think there's anything else involved in a human body other than what I just mentioned there. So the liver is a large organ relative to other organs. The skin is actually the biggest. So believe it or not, your skin is considered an organ. Now, the liver is about 3 pounds. It's on the right side of your belly. So you're right about here. It has right and left lobes, which break down in about 8 separate sublobes. It sits above the gallbladder, pancreas, intestines. So it basically works directly with those 3 organs, as we'll get into in the future in a little bit here. So it filters blood directly from the digestive tract, which includes detoxifying chemicals, metabolizing drugs, and it secretes the bile into the intestine. So the small intestines will take the bile and they'll use that to break down some fatty acids, and it'll store the excess in the gallbladder. I mean, you may have heard people getting their gallbladder removed for whatever the reason, because they apparently don't need it. In all actuality, you pretty much need every organ in your body. Your tonsils, your gallbladder, your appendix, your intestines, your fingers, your heart, your liver. You pretty much need it all. So to remove one bodily organ is not something that we would advise for here. Now, did I sit in a residency for 12 years and 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, and sit in a classroom for 5 years, 10 hours a day? Not necessarily, but see, nowadays, now that we have access to so much information online, the information highway, it provides us with a lot. I mean, yeah, you can get caught up in a lot of nonsense and chicanery and bamboozlement, but there is, say for example, if you open up a textbook about human anatomy, there's a lot of filler material because they had to fill a 6-month class. Whereas if you open up an article about the pancreas, it'll tell you vital information you need to know about it. And if you want to get into detail, there's further sources you can investigate. So you learn as much as you need, and you can learn as much as you want, rather than some old textbook that would probably cost hundreds of dollars because it's maybe only available to universities or college. So now that we have all this information readily available, it makes people's jobs of being healthy a little bit easier, but not entirely easy. I mean, you got to have the patience and the time to look into a lot of this stuff. Another thing that the liver does is it makes protein for blood clotting, like the platelets we were talking about earlier. And it does a lot of other functions as well. It helps to break down fats and either stores or releases them as energy. So you've probably heard of the ketogenic diet. We've talked about it before. So when you're in ketosis, that's when you can measure that with your urine too. If you urinate in a cup and you get these keto sticks, you stick them in there. If they turn purple, then you know you have ketones. If you get way into the ketogenic diet, there might have been a couple of weeks where I got so ensconced in it that I was actually urinating purple urine. So then you know that you got plenty of ketones. Now you could be getting close to ketoacidosis at that point, so it's probably not the best idea. Now, some interesting statistics about the liver. 13% of the body's blood is in the liver at any given time. The liver cells, also called hepatocytes, they're the ones that actually store a lot of your vitamins and minerals. And they'll determine whether they should go into your blood or if they're just going to let them hang around in the liver for a while. Because apparently vitamin B12 can be stored in the liver for up to 10 years. That was an interesting fact I read a long time ago. Because see, what happened is, according to my medical records, the part of my small intestines that were removed was where allegedly vitamin B12 is absorbed. So I put 2 and 2 together and thought, all right, let's get a blood test here. I got a blood test. Said I had plenty of vitamin B12. But maybe a year or two prior to that, I had an IV, which could have had vitamin B12 in it. Otherwise, not really sure where the vitamin B12 is coming from, if technically the only place your body absorbs it is in the ileum valve, or around the ileum valve in the small intestine. But usually if you cut off one part of the body knows what it needs, and then it'll grow other portions that'll take over that. Now, does that mean just take out random organs because some medical professional thinks you don't need them? Not the best idea. Is it a good idea? Maybe, maybe not. Depends on the circumstance. Now, so getting back to the ketones here, I want to touch base on that a little bit. See, the ketones can cross the blood-brain barrier and act as energy for the central nervous system. Now, you may have heard that only glucose is used to fuel the brain, but in all actuality, ketones can do that same functionality as well. So if you eat the ketogenic diet, it doesn't mean you're going to turn into a mental invalid or a feeble mind or mentally deficient or anything like that, because the ketones will take over that functionality. And it's progressive over time too, because when you first started, maybe only 25% of your brain will use ketones, and then it'll go all the way up to 90% or whatever. So there's always that to consider if you are considering the ketogenic diet, which is a great diet. A lot of good sources of information. Some people got some pretty good YouTube channels about it. Now, the liver can manufacture 800 to 100 milliliters of bile salt, which it sends to the small intestines. That helps to further break down the fat, and it's stored in the gallbladder. So when it breaks down the protein, it creates the ammonia as a byproduct, which is converted to urea and excreted by your kidney. And it also breaks down alcohol and then medication, as we alluded to earlier. And then some of the other functionality that the liver does is it creates the immune system factors to fight infection, proteins for clotting, breaking down the red blood cells, the old ones, the ones you don't need anymore. It doesn't just randomly break down healthy red blood cells. And it stores extra blood sugar as glycogen. Now, one of the interesting things about the liver that apparently not too many other organs have is that it can regenerate. So if you cut out 70% of your liver just for experimental purposes, and you're a reasonably healthy person, you eat healthy and all that, you get plants that come out of the ground that are in good unadulterated soil, you drink clean water with the magnesium, the calcium, the potassium, the sodium, and you don't really eat a plethora of calories, or you don't overindulge on calories, and you don't eat fried foods or trans fats or candy. So if you're a healthy person, you should theoretically be able to, with 30% of your liver, it will regenerate 200% after only a few weeks to a couple months. So the liver is pretty extraordinary and all that. It actually grows existing cells and it multiplies them. See, one of the things with picking up weights and setting them down is you grow your present cells, but they do not multiply unless you're taking human growth hormone. So some of the liver diseases out there, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, which excess fat accumulates in your liver. A hepatitis, there's several forms of that, A, B, C. It's an infection of the blood. And then there's the cirrhosis, where you start to get scarring of the liver. Usually happens from overconsumption of alcohol. Then there's hemochromatosis, which is iron overload. Iron just starts depositing in your liver, then it basically just turns into the iron mine, like in Hibbing, Minnesota. And then you have the biling atresia, which the biling ducts get all corroded and don't work anymore, and then you're not able to break down the fat in your small intestines. Another thing that definitely increases liver disease is pesticide exposure. And believe it or not, an excess of fat-soluble vitamins like vitamin A and niacin in high levels, very high levels, can also cause some problems. Some of the signs of disease, yeah, you get your typical nausea, fatigue, diarrhea, vomiting, all that. But some of the most obvious ones for liver disease would be jaundice, which is yellowing of the eyes and the skin, and then dark urine. Because if you get into dark urine, you could also, that's usually a good sign you're probably dehydrated. It could be a sign with kidney or liver. So those are usually the things to look for, you know, if you're concerned about that. Now, one of the things that we wanted to talk about a little bit was eating liver. You know, not human liver, but see, usually in animals, they try to filter out. So if you're gonna eat liver and you eat liver from a cow that's factory farm, it's probably gonna have more toxic chemicals and pesticide residue and all that stored in it. It doesn't try to store it in its liver, but just the fact that it's always working 24 hours a day to eradicate those toxins, it's gonna have it in its liver when you eat that animal's liver. Now, if you eat an animal that's clean sourced, pasture raised, outside, cage free, and all that, eats organic food, its liver is going to be way healthier than an animal that's factory farmed, you know, inside close quarters and indoors and eating GMO, soy, and corn. And liver, fortunately, stores a deluge of vitamins and minerals. I mean, liver is basically a superfood. I mean, they call a lot of things superfood, sweet potatoes, avocados, and whatnot, and mangoes, but liver it does have tons of vitamins and minerals, as long as you're getting it from a healthy source. You get it from bad source, yeah, it's going to have tons of chemical residue and pesticides, fungicides, herbicides, insecticides, all that stuff inside of it, which is something you don't want to eat, because eventually it turns into human side when we get too much of it. So liver has vitamin A, B12, riboflavin, folate, iron, copper, choline, and like we said before, it doesn't store toxins. It's always breaking them down. So if you're worried about eating too many toxins by eating liver, just as long as you find a clean source of it, then you'll be able to be great again. And it's mostly protein and fat too. So it's probably like 70% protein, 25% fat, then whatever 5% carbohydrates. Maybe a little bit of alcohol too if the animal was getting inebriated at some point prior to being slaughtered. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, we thank you very much for watching. Hopefully you enjoy some of the illustrations we have here. Nice that we've see, we're probably about hitting on maybe 6 cylinders right now. A V6, not an inline 6. Maybe we could be hitting on an inline 6 sometime in the near future, but we might make the illustrations more interactive sometime in the future, but for now they'll just be static. They may become dynamic, but then we'd probably have to set something up so I could actually see what was going on. But that is a little distracting, because when you watch the news channels, they're looking over here and they're pointing at the wall like they actually know what they're doing. Whereas if they're looking at the wall and pointing and talking to you, looking at this, pointing, then it looks more genuine and authentic, which is what I would go for. Because I don't really like insulting people's intelligence, which is why we don't read off teleprompters here. Because I mean, if I was just, I mean, yeah, we do take outlines and notes and everything. Otherwise, I wouldn't know what the hell I was talking about. But to just read off a teleprompter is not, it's disrespectful to the audience. It's a slap in the face. It's a knee to the groin. Not something we're gonna do. I mean, we will let you behind the curtain and tell you what's going on here, but for the most part, that's just because we like an informed audience and an entertained one as well. So thank you very much for watching, ladies and gentlemen. We truly appreciate you joining us this evening, and hopefully you can become great again. Thank you.